Hey guys, it's Sarah from RockyHedgeFarm.com, and today I'm so excited to be partnering with Clayton Homes to share with you one of my favorite ways to get the farmhouse look in our home. So one of my favorite ways to add that farmhouse character to our home is by adding shiplap to the walls. Now we've already done that on the dining room wall. We've also done that in our living room. And so now I'm going to step you guys through the process and show you what that looks like as we shiplap our hallway. Alright, so the wall to the left is my dining room wall, and the wall to the right is the living room area. And so this is the hallway, and I guess a year and a half ago, I went ahead and shiplapped one side of the hallway and then the very back wall, but we've never gotten around to doing this wall right here. And what you're also going to notice is that we don't have any doors on the bedrooms. There's 3 bedrooms in this area and 1 bathroom. So we're going to be adding doors in the near future, as well as finishing out the ceiling area. But what we have to do first is get this wall right here shiplapped. Okay, so I'm going to give you a little bit of a closer look at what is on the walls currently. This is just like, I call it sheetrock, and it's in pieces, but it's pretty thin. In our home, this has been glued on, as well as these have been used to hold this in place. So I already have it off of this section right here because not too long ago, my husband came in and replaced the outlets. So generally those are just in the middle between the studs, but as we redo the walls, we are going ahead and putting in new outlets and putting that directly into a stud. So the very first step that we needed to do was to remove that sheetrock. Now, when taking that sheetrock off, it came off fairly easily, but then in some instances we have had to scrape off like any of the glue, and you'll need to go through and of course hammer in any of the nails that are sticking out or staples, or you can also choose to remove those. So once the sheetrock is off of the walls, I go ahead and start cleaning up any of the mess that might be on the floor, while my husband starts to measure the wall to find out how long the shiplap boards need to be. So there's actually a couple of different ways that you can get the shiplap look in your home. I have always personally used actual shiplap boards. Now this time when we made the order, we ordered shiplap boards, but we ended up getting in tongue and groove, and I just decided to go ahead and go with it. Now the difference between shiplap and tongue and groove is that shiplap boards will rest on top of each other, whereas tongue and groove planks actually join together and they interlock. Now, I love using the 16-foot length boards, whether they're tongue and groove or shiplap. Again, you're going to get that same look. But the reason I love the 16-foot length is because on the majority of our walls, I have no staggering of the boards. They just simply go all the way across, and I don't have to worry about making sure that they're lined up in a certain way. So once we had all of the measurements taken that we needed, my husband went ahead and started cutting all of the boards. Now another thing we did was just went ahead and figured that we needed 11 boards from the bottom of the floor up to the top of that door frame, and all 11 of those boards needed to be cut the same size. So instead of having to stop and cut a board and then go attach it to the wall, he just went ahead and cut all 11 boards that he was going to be needing to use. Now while he was cutting boards, one of the things that I like to do is go ahead and start painting that gap that where the boards come together. And the reason I do that is because after the boards are attached, I can't get in that gap with a paintbrush. And sometimes whether it's hot outside or it's cold, sometimes those boards will expand and you'll see more of that gap than you will at other times. And so just real quickly, I put on a thin coat of paint, and it dries really fast. And so by the time that he is ready to start attaching them to the wall, the first board that I painted will already be dry. And again, this just saves a lot of hassle of trying to fill that crack in with paint after the boards are already on the wall. So once I have the boards painted, the next thing to do is just start attaching the boards to the wall. And we do this by using a nail gun that is hooked into an air compressor, and it just shoots the nails straight through the tongue and groove board, or the shiplap board if that's what we're using, straight into each one of the studs. Probably the trickiest part of putting up shiplap is having to measure around outlets or door frames, window frames if you have to deal with that. But every house is going to be completely different, and what we do is we just measure around the outlet, and then my husband will use a square in order to make sure that his lines are straight, and then he will use a jigsaw to cut out this section that he needs. Now for this outlet on the wall, we had to cut a shiplap board for the bottom area of the outlet and also for the top part of the outlet. Sometimes we have put these up and we've had to cut a hole in the middle of a board. So it's just going to vary each time on where we have to cut that board. So one of the things that you're going to notice between the shiplap and tongue and groove is, again, shiplap will just overlap each other. But if you notice, my husband's having to use like another piece of a board, and actually it's just a piece of flooring from when we put our floors down, to securely get the tongue and groove to interlock. And so you don't actually want to hammer on the tongue and groove board itself because you can damage that groove. So again, he's just using another board and hammering that board to make sure that our tongue and groove is interlocked correctly before he goes ahead and continues to nail up each one of the individual boards. So my husband continued to nail up boards and work until he got to the top of the door frame, and then we also had to measure an area between the girls' room in order to put shiplap boards, or the tongue and groove in this instance, between their bedroom. And then at the very end of the hallway, I had already put shiplap boards up from the previous time, but we decided to take those off and just use tongue and groove so that that entire wall was all the same thing and everything would line up correctly. Now this wall ended up being just a little over 16 feet. So the boards at the very end of the hallway do have a line where you can tell that we put the 16-foot board and then there's another board in that gap. But it's at the very end of the hallway, it's not real noticeable, and by the time we trim out the doors, you won't even hardly be able to tell that it has that staggered look down there. So once you get to the very top of the wall, what you may find, and what we found, is that the gap is not big enough for the full width of the tongue and groove or shiplap board, whatever you're using. So what has to be done is that board then has to be cut in half, or whatever the measurement is that you have, in order to fit up there. And then you just go ahead and nail it up with the nail gun. So now that we have this wall finished, I wanted to take a moment just to show you guys the difference between shiplap and tongue and groove. So again, this wall here is the hallway, and then the painted wall is the living room, and this is the corner where they come together. So this is what a tongue and groove board looks like, and they just interlock, whereas with shiplap, it looks more like an L shape that they just overlap. So there's still quite a bit to do in this little area. I need to finish painting this wall, and then we will also be putting up trim on this corner. And you can probably tell that the lines look a little bit off, but by the time we put up trim, it's really not going to be that noticeable unless you're really looking to see if the lines match up or not. So we also have to put up doors still, trim around those, and then we're going to be doing beadboard on the ceiling. So still a lot to come for the final reveal. It'll be happening probably in a couple of weeks. So don't forget to stop by the blog, RockyHedgeFarm.com, where you guys can subscribe to my newsletter and stay up to date with all the latest happenings here at Rocky Hedge Farm.